When I turned 18, I thought my parents would finally see me as an equal to my sister. But instead, they gave her a BMW with a giant red bow. And me? I got $2, just 2 crumpled bills. That night, I packed my bag, walked out at 2 a.m., and blocked them forever. Here's what really happened. Part 1. Growing up in the shadows. I guess I always knew I was the other child. When you grow up in a family where favoritism isn't just subtle but obvious, you learn to live in someone else's shadow. My sister Sierra, she was the golden child, the miracle, the one who could do no wrong. And me? I was the reminder that life isn't perfect. Some families try to hide favoritism, but my parents never bothered. They wore it like a badge of honor. I remember being about 7 years old when it really hit me. Sierra had just gotten a part in the school play. She was a tree, literally standing in the background, barely with any lines. My parents threw a party at home, inviting neighbors, baking a cake with "Congratulations, Sierra," written in bright pink frosting. I sat at the corner of the table, watching everyone cheer for her. When I showed them my spelling test with a 100% score taped to it, my mom smiled faintly and said, "That's nice, honey," before turning back to Sierra to talk about costumes for the play. That night, I crumpled my test paper and threw it in the trash. That was the first time I realized it didn't matter what I achieved. Sierra's smallest victories were worth more than my biggest ones. Birthdays made the favoritism even clearer. Sierra's birthdays were grand affairs, balloons filling. The living room, cakes shaped like castles, gift bags for every guest. I remember one year she got a brand new iPad just because she needed it for school. Meanwhile, my birthday fell in the middle of the school year and usually slipped by with nothing more than a store-bought cake and maybe a shirt I didn't like. I used to tell myself, it's okay. They love us both in their own way. But the truth gnawed at me every time I saw Sierra's gifts piled high, while mine barely filled a shoebox. Christmas wasn't much different. I remember one Christmas morning when Sierra unwrapped an iPhone. She screamed, hugged our parents, and immediately started posting selfies. My gift? A pair of socks with little snowflakes on them. My dad laughed and said, "Practical gifts are the best, aren't they?" I forced a smile, but inside, it felt like a punch in the gut. Even school achievements showed the divide. Sierra once came home with a C+ in math, and my parents told her, "That's okay, sweetheart. You tried your best." They even bought her ice cream to cheer her up. I came home with an A+ in science, and my dad barely looked up from his newspaper. "That's what we expect from you," he said flatly. Do you know what that does to a kid? It makes you believe that no matter how hard you work, it will never be enough. By the time we were teenagers, the roles were set in stone. Sierra was the star, and I was the background character. She wanted to be a cheerleader? They bought her. Uniforms, paid for private lessons, even drove her to every practice. I wanted to join the debate team. My parents said, "We don't have time for that, just focus on school." When Sierra wanted a car at 16, they bought her an old used Honda to practice with. I wanted a bicycle to get to my part-time job, and they told me to save up for it myself. I ended up working weekends at the grocery store, bagging groceries just to buy a second-hand bike, while Sierra cruised around town in her Honda, bragging about how generous our parents were. Don't want you to think I hated my sister. It's not like she chose to be the favorite, but she leaned into it, hard. She knew she had the upper hand. If we argued, she'd run to my parents and cry, and I'd be the one grounded. If she wanted something, she'd get it. No questions asked. And me? I'd be told, "We'll think about it." Spoiler alert, they never did. Deep down, I kept hoping that one day, my parents would wake up and realize what they were doing. That one day, I'd walk into the living room, and they'd surprise me with something just for me. Something that said, "We see you. We love you too." But that day never came. By the time Sierra turned 18, I had already braced myself. I knew her birthday would be big. I knew mine would be ignored, like always. But even then, even with years of disappointment stacked against me, nothing, absolutely nothing, could have prepared me for what happened the night they gave her that BMW and me. just $2. Part 2. The Big Birthday Party. Sierra's 18th birthday wasn't just a celebration. It was a spectacle. My parents planned it for months. I overheard them whispering late at night, making lists, calling relatives, booking vendors. They acted like they were organizing a royal coronation instead of a teenager's birthday. Meanwhile, when I turned 18 just 3 months before, my party was a sad little cake on the kitchen counter. No balloons, no relatives, not even candles. My dad handed me a $20 bill and said, "Don't spend it all in one place." That was it. No cameras, no music, no proud speeches. So when Sierra's birthday rolled around, I already knew I'd be nothing more than a background character. The day of the party, I woke up to chaos. Caterers carried trays of food into the house. A giant 3-tier cake was delivered, decorated with pink frosting and edible glitter. Balloons filled the living room, tied in perfect clusters that spelled out her name. Happy birthday, Sierra. And me? I was put to work. Carry those chairs outside, Mom ordered. Don't drop the plates, Dad snapped. Can you run to the store and grab more napkins? Make it quick. I wanted to scream, why am I the servant at my sister's party? But I swallowed my pride. I'd learned long ago that arguing only made things worse. By evening, the house looked like a wedding venue. Fairy lights twinkled across the backyard, tables were covered in white cloth, and a small stage was set up. For speeches and apparently some kind of performance Sierra had planned with her friends. Guests started arriving in droves. Relatives I hadn't seen in years walked through the door, arms loaded with expensive gift bags. Neighbors came, co-workers came. Heck, I think my parents even invited their dentist. The whole neighborhood seemed to show up. Everyone kept saying the same thing. Wow, you really outdid yourselves for Sierra. She's so lucky to have parents like you. 18 is such a special age. What a beautiful party. No one asked about me. No one said, didn't you just turn 18? Too? It was like I didn't exist. As the night went on, I kept to the sidelines, sipping soda and avoiding eye contact. Then came the moment everyone had been waiting for. The music stopped. The lights dimmed. My dad took the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, he announced, thank you all for coming to celebrate our beautiful daughter Sierra's 18th birthday. We wanted to give her something truly special to mark this milestone in her life. Something to show her just how much we love her. Everyone clapped. Cameras came out. Sierra stood in the center of the yard, hands covering her mouth dramatically like she was about to faint. Then I heard it. The rumble of an engine. From the driveway, headlights appeared. Slowly, a shiny black BMW rolled into the backyard, decorated with a massive red bow on top. The crowd gasped. Some people cheered. My aunt actually wiped away tears. Sierra screamed, like she had just won the lottery. Oh my God! She ran toward the car, hugging it, kissing the hood, then throwing herself into my parents' arms. I can't believe this. You guys are the best parents ever. Photographers snapped photos. Relatives pulled out their phones, recording every second. My parents beamed with pride as if they had just cured cancer. And me? I stood frozen, clutching a paper plate of half-eaten cake, feeling invisible. After the applause died down, my dad turned to me. And don't think we forgot about you, he said, grinning. For a split second, my heart skipped. Could it be? Maybe they finally saw me. Maybe they wanted to surprise me too. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small white envelope. He handed it to me in front of everyone. Hands shaking. I opened it. Inside were 2 crumpled $1 bills. At first, I thought it was a joke. I waited for the laughter, for someone to say, just kidding, here's your real gift. But no, one laughed. No one corrected him. My dad smirked. My mom nodded approvingly. Practical, right? You're the responsible one. You don't need fancy things. Sierra deserves the car because she's special. Some guests chuckled awkwardly. My cousin whispered, that's messed up. But no one said anything out loud. And Sierra? She burst out laughing. She held up her new car keys and said, hey, maybe you can be my chauffeur now. $2 can buy you gas for like half a mile. Everyone laughed with her. Everyone except me. Later, as we all sat down for dinner, my dad stood up with a glass of champagne. "Here's to Sierra," he declared. "Our pride and joy, our shining star. May this car take you far in life, just like we know you will go." Far. He raised his glass. Everyone clinked theirs together. Not a word about me. Not even a token. We're proud of both our kids. I stared at those $2 bills in my pocket, feeling like my entire life had been reduced to the value of spare change. At that moment, I realized the truth. I would never be their priority. I would never be enough. And I decided I wasn't going to stick around to be treated like that anymore. Part 3. The $2 gift. Humiliation. I stood there holding the envelope in my hand, staring at the 2 crumpled dollar bills like they were mocking me. The entire backyard was buzzing with laughter, music, and flashing cameras. But in that moment, I swear the world went quiet. It's strange how humiliation works. Time slows down. You hear every chuckle, every whispered comment, every shuffle of feet. I could hear my cousin mutter under his breath, "That's messed up." I could see my aunt's tight, awkward smile, like she knew it was wrong but wasn't brave enough to say anything. And then there was Sierra, twirling her new BMW car keys around her finger, grinning ear to ear, milking every second of attention. She looked right at me and smirked. "Wow, don't spend it all in one place. Maybe you can buy yourself, I don't know, a soda?" The people standing around her laughed. Not everyone, but enough to sting. A joke. That wasn't a joke. I wanted so badly to believe it was just a prank. That any second my parents would laugh, say, "Gotcha," and hand me a real gift. Maybe not a BMW, but something meaningful. Something that said, "We see you, we love you too." But the joke never came. My dad actually clapped me on the back and said, "Don't be ungrateful. $2 can go a long way if you're smart with it." And my mom added, "See, your sister deserves the BMW. She's hardworking, talented, and she needs it. You're practical. You'll be fine without luxuries." Practical. That's the word they always used for me. When Sierra wanted new clothes, she was fashionable. When I asked for clothes, I was practical. When Sierra wanted to go on trips with her friends, she was independent. When I wanted to go out, I was reckless. Practical. Responsible. The reliable one. Those were just fancy words for, "We don't care enough about you to give you more." The worst part wasn't the gift, it was the audience. Dozens of relatives, family friends, and neighbors were watching me get humiliated in real time. I could feel their eyes on me, some pitying, some amused, most just waiting to see if I'd explode. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tear up the money and throw it in my parents' faces. I wanted to tell everyone what it felt like to grow up invisible, to be treated like spare change while my sister got everything handed to her. But instead, I froze. I shoved the 2 bills back into the envelope and slipped it into my pocket. My hands were trembling, my face burning red, but I forced a smile. I pretended it didn't bother me. Because what else could I do? If I cried, Sierra would call me dramatic. If I yelled, my parents would say I was ruining the party. So I stood there, silent, swallowing my pride along with the lump in my throat. Later, when dinner was served, the humiliation didn't stop. As I sat down at the long table, Sierra waved her car keys around like a trophy. She leaned across the table, loud enough for everyone to hear, and said, "So, when I get bored of driving, maybe I'll let you ride shotgun, but only if you chip in for gas with your $2. Everyone laughed again. My parents didn't. "Stop her." They laughed too. I wanted to disappear. I pushed food around my plate, barely tasting anything. Every bite felt heavy, every laugh echoing like a slap across my face. Halfway through the meal, my uncle tried to make small talk with me. "So, what's next for you now that you're 18? He asked kindly. Before I could answer, Sierra cut in. "Probably saving up for a tricycle with those $2. Even my uncle chuckled. That was the moment I realized I wasn't just humiliated. I was a joke. To my family, to my relatives, to everyone in that room. Then came the toast. My Dad stood up, glass of champagne raised high. To Sierra, he declared, beaming. Our pride and joy. The daughter who makes us so proud. May this BMW take her far in life, just like we know she will go far. Everyone clapped. Glasses clinked. Sierra blushed, pretending to be modest while soaking up the attention. And me? Not even a passing mention. Not a token, we're proud of both our kids. Nothing. I sat there with my water glass, staring at the tablecloth, fighting the urge to cry. My chest felt tight, my hands balled into fists under the table. Dot. At that moment, something inside me cracked. Dot. It wasn't just about the $2. It wasn't just about the BMW. Dot. It was years of being overlooked, dismissed, treated like a shadow. Dot. And I realized I couldn't do this anymore. I couldn't sit at this table, surrounded by laughter and fake smiles, pretending I belonged in a family that never really wanted me. I didn't say anything that night. I didn't make a scene. I didn't yell or fight. Dot. Instead, I made a silent promise to myself. This is the last time they ever humiliate me. I would take those $2, not as a gift, but as a receipt. A reminder of exactly how much I was worth to them. Dot. And when the night ended, when everyone went home and the house was finally quiet, I knew what I had to do. I was leaving. Part 4. The breaking point. Leaving at 2 a.m. Asterisk. The party eventually wound down, but the sting of humiliation never left me. As guests trickled out, I lingered in the corner, invisible, watching everyone gush over Sierra's BMW parked proudly in the driveway. She posed with her friends, laughing, hair shining under the fairy lights, while I busied myself stacking dirty plates and cups like some unpaid busboy. When the last guest finally left and the lights dimmed, the house grew quiet. My parents and Sierra went upstairs, drunk with pride and exhaustion. I stood in the kitchen alone, staring at the pile of leftovers. The laughter still echoed in my ears, especially Sierra's voice mocking me. Guess you can be my chauffeur now. Don't spend your $2 all in one place. My chest tightened, my eyes burned, and for the first time I didn't try to swallow it down. I let myself feel the full weight of it. That's when the decision solidified. I couldn't stay. In my room. Crept up to my room, careful not to wake anyone. The house was dark, but I knew every creak in the stairs, every corner to avoid stepping on. Closing my bedroom door behind me felt like shutting the world out. I sat on my bed, staring at the walls. Posters of bands I used to like, a bookshelf stacked with secondhand novels, a desk piled with old notebooks. None of it felt like mine anymore. None of it felt like home. On my nightstand, I saw the envelope. 2 wrinkled dollar bills peeking out, sitting there like a cruel joke. I picked them up and turned them over in my hands, the paper soft from being handled too many times already. $2. That's what I was worth. That was my value, after 18 years of loyalty, obedience, and sacrifice. I laughed bitterly, the sound strange in the quiet room. 18 years, reduced to spare change. That laugh quickly turned into tears. Silent ones, sliding down my face, soaking my pillow. But then, just as quickly, the tears dried up. Because I wasn't sad anymore. I was done. Packing up, I pulled my duffel bag out from under the bed. It wasn't much, just something I used when I stayed over at my friend's place. Tonight, it would become my escape bag. I started with clothes. Jeans, t-shirts, socks, whatever would fit. I didn't take everything. I didn't want the bag to be heavy. I just needed enough to get by for a while. Next, I grabbed my savings, a shoebox hidden at the back of my closet, filled with crumpled bills and coins from months of part-time work. I had maybe $600, give or take. Not a fortune, but enough to survive until I figured things out. I slid the $2 into the box, not as money, but as a reminder. A receipt of what my parents thought I was worth. I swore to myself I'd keep it forever, not because I wanted to, but because I never wanted to forget. I packed a few books, my old journal, a photo of me and my best friend from middle school, the only picture in which I actually looked happy. As I zipped the bag, I paused. My room suddenly felt different, empty. Like it wasn't mine anymore. Like I had already left, even though my feet were still on the carpet. Flashbacks. While packing, as I looked around one last time, memories rushed back. Sitting on the floor building Lego castles while Sierra got praised for drawing a stick figure. Eating burnt pancakes on my birthday because mom forgot, while Sierra got a bakery cake with candles tall enough to light up the neighborhood. Listening to my parents brag about Sierra at dinner parties while I washed dishes in the kitchen. Every memory stung, but instead of breaking me, they fueled me. They reminded me why I had to go. The final message before leaving, I pulled out my phone. My hands trembled as I opened the family group chat. The last message was from my mom earlier that day. Don't forget to wear something nice for Sierra's party tonight. I typed slowly, carefully. Don't bother contacting me. You've already shown me my worth. $2. I stared at it for a moment. My thumb hovered over the send button. And then I pressed it. Delivered. Without giving myself time to regret it, I blocked every single one of them. My parents, Sierra, even my cousins. Every tie severed in seconds. Walking away at 2 a.m. It was almost 2 a.m. when I quietly opened my bedroom door. The house was silent, everyone asleep. I crept down the stairs, duffel bag slung over my shoulder. Every creak felt like an alarm, but no, one stirred. When I reached the front door, I paused. I looked back one last time at the house I had grown up in. The house where I had laughed as a child, cried as a teenager, and suffered in silence for years. For a moment, I almost felt guilty. Almost. But then I remembered Sierra's laughter, my parents' proud faces as they handed her the BMW keys, and the 2 crumpled dollar bills in my pocket. The guilt evaporated. I opened the door, stepped outside, and breathed in the cold night air. It was quiet, the kind of quiet that feels heavy but freeing at the same time. I walked down the driveway, past the shiny BMW that glistened under the streetlights. I glanced at it one last time, shook my head, and kept walking. And just like that, I was gone. The first step to freedom. That night, as I walked away at 2 a.m. with nothing but a duffel bag and determination, I wasn't scared. I wasn't lost. For the first time in my life, I felt free. Because sometimes the bravest thing you can do isn't to fight, it's to walk away. Part 5, The Aftermath. When I woke up the next morning, sunlight streamed through blinds that weren't mine. For a second, I panicked. Where was I? Then I remembered. I wasn't at home anymore. I was lying on the couch in my best friend, Jay's apartment. The duffel bag sat on the floor, exactly where I dropped it at 2:30 in the morning. My shoes were still by the door. My phone buzzed nonstop on the coffee table, the vibrations rattling against the wood like angry bees. I knew who it was before I even picked it up. The first wave. Pretending to care. The first few voicemails were syrupy sweet, my mom's voice, trying to sound calm but tinged with annoyance. Honey, where did you go? We woke up and you weren't here. Come back, please. You're worrying us. Another from my dad, louder. Don't be dramatic. You're 18 now, but you're still under our roof. Get home immediately. I almost laughed. Dramatic. That was always the word they used when I finally pushed back against their treatment. If I cried, dramatic. If I asked for fairness, dramatic. Even now, when I walked away after years of being treated like trash, dramatic. The second wave. Anger by the fourth voicemail, the tone had shifted. My dad's voice thundered through the speaker. If you don't come home right now, we'll report you as missing. Don't test us. Then my mom, sharper this time. You're embarrassing us. The whole family is asking where you are. Do you want to humiliate us after everything we've done for you? I clenched my jaw so hard it hurt. Everything they've done for me? What? Buy me socks while giving my sister a brand new car? Hand me $2 while throwing a parade for her? For the first time, their words didn't sting. They fueled me. Every guilt trip, every manipulative line was proof that I made the right choice. Sierra's mockery. By mid-morning, Sierra's texts and voicemails started flooding in. Hers weren't worried or angry, they were cruel. LOL, so dramatic. All this over $2? Good luck out there. Hope you can afford ramen with your savings. Don't. Expect me to beg for you to come back. Mom and Dad are happier without you anyway. She even sent me a picture of herself posing with the BMW, flipping the camera the middle finger, captioned, "Guess who won, loser?" For a second, I felt my stomach twist with anger. But then, something surprising happened. I smiled, because Sierra wasn't winning. Not really. She was still trapped in that house, tied to their approval, desperate for their validation. Meanwhile, I was free. The silence of no contact by noon, I turned my phone off. The buzzing was too much. Jay walked into the living room, rubbing sleep from his eyes. "You okay?" he asked gently. I nodded. My voice cracked anyway. "Yeah, better than I've ever been." He didn't push. He just handed me a mug of coffee and sat with me in silence. That small act of kindness, that simple sense of being seen, felt more valuable than 18 years of empty words from my parents adjusting to freedom. The first few days were strange. I kept waiting for guilt to creep in, for regret to take root. But instead, I felt lighter. Sure, the couch wasn't comfortable. Sure, eating cheap takeout wasn't glamorous. But every small discomfort was mine. My choice. My independence. I started looking for part-time shifts at nearby cafes and grocery stores. With Jay's help, I printed resumes, walked into businesses, and introduced myself. It was terrifying, but also empowering. Every dollar I earned felt like a declaration. I don't need you. What others said, of course, word got around fast. Some relatives texted me in secret. "I can't believe they did that to you. You deserve better." But none of them spoke up at the party. None of them defended me when I was humiliated. Their sympathy now felt hollow. Others took my parents' side. They were just joking. Lighten up. Family is family. You'll regret cutting them off. But I didn't regret it. Not for a second. The BMW incident a month later. News reached me through the family grapevine. Sierra had crashed her shiny new BMW. Nothing life-threatening, but the car was totaled enough that repairs cost thousands. Insurance rates skyrocketed. My parents were furious, but of course they still bailed her out. I laughed when I heard it. Not because I wanted her hurt, never that, but because it felt like poetic justice. The golden child got the golden car, and within weeks, it turned into nothing more than a metal headache. Meanwhile, I was slowly building a life. A small one, but mine. The realization, one night, a few weeks after leaving, I pulled those 2 crumpled dollar bills from my wallet. I smoothed them out on the table and just stared. For years, they made me believe I was worth less. That no matter what I did, I'd always be second best. But sitting there in Jay's tiny apartment, sipping cheap coffee and listening to the hum of the city outside, I realized something. Those $2 weren't a gift. They were a measurement. And they had measured wrong, because I was worth so much more than they ever gave me credit for. The best revenge. My parents thought cutting me off would punish me. Sierra thought mocking me would break me. But the truth? The best revenge wasn't yelling, wasn't fighting, wasn't even proving them wrong directly. The best revenge was peace. The best revenge was waking up every day knowing I didn't need their approval, their money, their so-called love. Walking away was the loudest message I could ever send, and I didn't even need to raise my voice. Part 6, The Best Revenge. At first, leaving felt like stepping into a storm with no umbrella. I had no clear plan, no roadmap, just a duffel bag, a few $100s, and a stubborn refusal to ever go back. But what surprised me was how quickly the fear turned into freedom. Small victories. The first week away was full of small victories that felt enormous. I landed a shift at a local cafe, wiping tables and making lattes. It wasn't glamorous, but when I held my first paycheck, just under $300, it felt like gold. Not because of the money itself, but because it was mine. Earned by me. Nobody could take credit for it, and nobody could dangle it over my head like a conditional prize. With each shift, I got better at smiling at customers, better at learning how to steam milk just right, better at balancing trays without spilling. My boss even complimented me one afternoon. You're a hard worker, reliable. That word, reliable, used to feel like a curse in my parents' house, code for, we don't need to reward you. But here, it felt different. It felt like respect. Redefining Home J's apartment was cramped, the kind of place where the pipes groaned whenever you turned on the shower, and the walls were thin enough to hear the neighbors arguing. But it was also the first place I ever felt at home. He never made me feel like a burden. When I tried to pay him rent too early, he waved me off. Save your money, get on your feet first. Sometimes, late at night, we'd sit on the balcony, eating instant noodles, watching headlights streak across the street below. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel invisible. I felt like someone actually wanted me around, not because of what I could do for them, but because of who I was. The family's reaction. Of course, my parents didn't take the silence well. Even though I blocked them, word trickled down through relatives. Apparently, my mom was telling people I was rebellious and ungrateful. My dad insisted I'd come crawling back once I realized how hard the real world was. Sierra, on the other hand, milked the story for all it was worth. At gatherings, she'd dramatically sigh and say, "My poor sibling just couldn't handle that I got the BMW. It's so sad, really." She left out the part where they gave me $2. Convenient. But what none of them realized was that every word they spread about me, every smug comment, only pushed me further away. Hearing about the BMW. The day I heard Sierra crashed her BMW, I nearly spit out my coffee from laughing. She'd been speeding, showing off to her friends, and lost control. Luckily, no one was seriously hurt, but the car was a wreck. The repairs were astronomical, and the insurance company practically laughed at my parents when they saw the claim. For weeks, my parents scrambled to cover the costs, juggling bills, borrowing money, doing whatever they could to fix Sierra's mistake. And the best part? Relatives whispered about it behind their backs. Maybe they spoiled her too much. Maybe that's why she drives like she owns the world. Meanwhile, I was quietly working double shifts, saving and planning. That was my BMW. Not the car itself, but the symbolic wreckage. It represented everything wrong with the favoritism in our house. How they gave Sierra the world, only to watch her destroy it. And me? I was building, slowly but surely, without them. Learning self-worth. At first, I thought revenge meant proving myself to them, making enough money, being successful enough that they'd finally regret how they treated me. But over time, I realized I didn't care if they regretted it. The real revenge wasn't about them at all. It was about me. It was about waking up every morning, brewing my own coffee, walking to work, and knowing I had carved out this life without their help. It was about the peace of coming home to a place where no one mocked me. No one measured my worth against someone else. No one reduced me to $2. It was about the laughter I shared with coworkers, the satisfaction of a good day's work, the simple joy of buying myself a cheap takeout meal and not feeling guilty for spending too much. For the first time, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel second best. I felt enough. The moment of clarity one night after a long shift, I pulled those 2 crumpled dollar bills from my wallet. I smoothed them out on the table and just stared dot. In that moment, I realized something powerful. My parents didn't define my worth. Those bills didn't define my worth. I did. And the fact that I had walked away, that I had chosen peace over pain, proved I was worth far more than they'd ever given me credit for. Why walking away was the best revenge. Here's the thing about toxic people. They feed on control. They thrive on making you doubt yourself, on keeping you small, on dangling approval like a carrot you'll never reach. By leaving, I took that control away. My parents couldn't guilt me anymore. Sierra couldn't mock me anymore. They couldn't use money or gifts or their approval as weapons against me. I chose freedom. And that choice, more than anything else, was the sharpest revenge I could have served, because nothing hurts them more than realizing they can't touch me anymore. It's been months since that night I walked out at 2 a.m. Sometimes I still catch myself wondering if it was all a dream. The BMW with the red bow, the laughter at my expense, the envelope with 2 crumpled bills. But then I look at where I am now, and I know it wasn't a dream. It was the wake-up call I desperately needed. Looking back at the old me, I think back to the kid I used to be, the one who worked twice as hard for half the recognition, the one who clung to every scrap of attention my parents gave me, hoping it meant something. The one who accepted humiliation after humiliation because I thought that was what love looked like. That kid would never have believed I could leave. That kid would have thought walking away made me selfish, ungrateful, dramatic. That kid would have gone back the next morning, apologizing for causing trouble, begging for forgiveness. But I'm not that kid anymore. The moment I closed that door behind me, duffel bag over my shoulder, I stopped being the shadow in Sierra's spotlight. I became my own person. What family really means, people like to say, family is everything. But I've learned that's not always true. Family isn't supposed to make you feel small. Family isn't supposed to measure your worth in dollars or pit you against your sibling like it's some twisted competition. Family is supposed to build you up, not tear you down, and if the people who are supposed to love you most can't even do that, then sometimes the bravest thing you can do is cut those ties. Because at the end of the day, blood doesn't mean loyalty. Blood doesn't mean love. Actions do. Respect does. The guilt that never came. When I first left, I expected guilt to come crashing down on me. That I'd miss them so badly I'd cave and run back. But the guilt never came. The sadness never came. Instead, I felt something else. Relief. Relief that I didn't have to sit at another dinner table being ignored. Relief that I didn't have to force a smile when Sierra mocked me. Relief that I didn't have to keep proving myself to parents who never wanted to see me. The silence of no contact was louder than any argument. It was freedom. Hearing their stories through whispers from relatives, I still hear bits and pieces of what's happening back home. Apparently, Sierra is still struggling with that BMW. Insurance doubled. Repairs drained my parents' savings. She complains constantly about how unfair it is, but of course, they still bend over backward to fix it. And my parents? They're starting to realize they can't control me anymore. At family gatherings, when someone asks, "Where's your other kid?" they avoid the question. They don't like admitting that I left, because admitting it means admitting they failed. I don't need their regret. I don't need their apologies. But part of me wonders if, late at night, when the house is quiet, they ever look at each other and think, we pushed too far. We lost them. If they do, then that's their burden to carry, not mine. The lesson I carry. If there's one thing this whole experience taught me, it's this. Sometimes the best revenge isn't shouting or fighting or proving someone wrong. Sometimes the best revenge is silence. Sometimes the best revenge is walking away and never looking back. Sometimes the best revenge is building a life so peaceful, so full of self-worth, that the people who tried to break you can't touch it. Because peace is priceless. And once you taste it, you'll never settle for less. The $2 reminder, I still keep those 2 crumpled bills. Not in my wallet, not where I'll spend them by accident, but tucked into my journal. Whenever I feel doubt creeping in, whenever I wonder if maybe I was too harsh, I pull them out and remind myself, that's what they thought I was worth. $2, and then I look at my life now, the job I've built, the friendships I've strengthened, the independence I've gained, and I remember that my worth has never been tied to their approval. Those 2 bills are no longer an insult. They're a reminder of how far I've come. If you're listening to this and you've ever felt like the invisible one, the forgotten one, the second best, hear me now. You are not what they say you are. You are not the scraps they give you. You are not the shadow of someone else's spotlight. You are enough. And sometimes, the bravest, strongest, most freeing thing you can do is to walk away. Because once you do, you'll realize the truth. I finally learned the night I left at 2 a.m. The best revenge isn't a BMW. The best revenge isn't proving them wrong. The best revenge is peace, and peace is something no one can take from me again.